like I said, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I agree.
That's guys like Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor. I think Aaron Rodgers will probably be. But I do think he'll get in after a few tries.
Jerry, I have a little bit of football emotional attachment to Eli Manning and that Giants team that year
Mm-hmm.
because that was the first window to me understanding that I needed to take steps into covering football and getting into football more. I was working at a restaurant, and they had, it was the first time in my life they had satellite TV. And so I was watching NFL Network like all day. I was working 16 hours a day, usually 5, 6, 7 days a week sometimes. And so that Super Bowl comes up that year, right? And we're doing a wedding. And about 5:30 that night, I would get done watching, we're doing a big wedding, and I get done doing my prep, and we're having a cigarette and a smoke break, and we're talking about the game. And I said, they're talking about how we're not going to be able to watch it because the TV's out in the bar and we got all this stuff to do. And I said, I don't need to watch the game. I already know what's going to happen. And I literally called the not only the score, but the sequence, who's going to score. I was like, dude, this isn't going to be a high-scoring game. The Patriots are going to go. Eli Manning's going to pull it off. They're going to be down by 14 going in the fourth quarter, and they're going to end up scoring 14 points, and they're going to win 17-14 in a last-second touchdown in the corner, in the end zone to probably Plexico Burst because that's his big 50-50 guy.
Yeah,
and literally,
right.
I got out of work for the last 20 minutes because my boss pulled me off the line and said, you need to come watch this. I can't believe you should have bet $1 million on this. You retire. It's happening, Jay. Get your ass out there. And it was like from that point on, people were like, dude, I don't know how you got that. And it was like, well, I've been watching this football stuff, and it's really football's not that hard to understand. I played it, and it was like you could see what was going to happen. It was a bad matchup between their defensive line and that offense, and just the way they operated. It was just a bad matchup, man, and it was going to be a low-scoring, close game. That's just how the teams – so that's really – I have this connection with that team because – everybody started kind of pushing me towards, dude, you understand football. Like, you really need to pay more attention to it. So it took me a long time to kind of get there because I was still competing in sports and stuff. But, yeah, I have a connection with that team because it was my first step towards to where I'm sitting right now today.
No, that's good stuff. That's awesome. And I think, they played them tough week 17 that year too. It was a higher score. I think it was 38-35, I believe.
That's why everybody thought it was going to be a high-scoring game again. It's like, no, dude. They let all the cats out of the bag. The defenses are going to dominate this game.
Yeah, the Giants, that team did something weird. I believe they beat every team they played because even the games they lost – they played them again and won, so they lost.
You guys lost to us in week 2 that year,
right?
And then
right.
came back in the championship game and beat us.
Yep.
It was
Dallas,
a cool thing.
The Patriots. Yeah, it was a strange year. Yep.
Well, you know what? Moving on to this year's rookie QB we mentioned earlier, and I know you talked about him a little bit earlier, but I got to ask, Jerry, are you liking what you're seeing from Daniel Jones? And it looks like, from my opinion, that Gettleman, everyone criticized him for giving him crap about not picking Haskins, and now he looks like a genius. What do you feel on that?
Yeah, overall, I mean, I was at the draft, and I left after they took Jones because, like I said, you put together a list of guys you want. I wanted Josh Allen. I did not want. I wanted to wait for a quarterback for this year. I wanted either Herbert or Fromm or Burrow or
the whole
or
slew of
Tua.
guys they got.
Right. As I said, you know what? You're going to have another year. You got Eli in his last contract. I'm not saying they were going to win with Eli, but I was willing to wait. Then they took Jones, and I was pretty mad. But I think he's proven me wrong over the last 6-7 months, whatever it is. He still has a fumbling problem. That is not going away. That was a problem at Duke. But he's cut back on the interceptions. He has 17 touchdowns. What I was surprised with him is his arm is better than I thought, or better than advertised. They said his arm wasn't strong. That's not true, and he is incredibly accurate.
He's able to reach out there, man. I tell you, I watched a couple bombs from him. He's able to reach out there.
And look, could they have traded down and gotten him? Maybe, but if that's the guy you want, you don't take that chance. When when I walked out of the draft that night, and it was because of the sheer laughter of the rest of the media. I mean, they had a great time with it. They were hysterically laughing, all of them, from every team. Every beat reporter was laughing. And I handled it like a 5-year-old. I walked out of the draft, and as I walked out, I saw a bunch of Denver fans who were mad. I said, "What's wrong with you guys?" They said, "We just traded down because the Giants took our guy." And I thought, well, they're just fans. Maybe they do know. I don't know. But they were picking 10th. I think they traded down to 20. So long story short, overall, yes, but he's got to clean up the fumbling or it will be his undoing. He has to stop fumbling. It reminds me of Kerry Collins in 01. I think he set the record for fumbles. So
can I ask you a serious question?
I remember that.
You actually have a press pass and you're around this. Do you get the feeling in those types of situations, do you feel like the only serious football mind in the room when stuff like that happens? Because I've had a hard time and I've gotten away from really anything outside of Good Morning Football and NFL Network. I've quit consuming it because it seems to be a lot of bloviation, a lot of taking a lot of mud pie and trying to put fudge icing on it and tell me that it's chocolate silk pie.
Yeah, I think what happens is you fall into the trap, and I did that night of listening to people who know nothing about college football. There are scouts and there are analysts and serious ones who like Daniel Jones, but because he went to Duke and because they said the name Dave Brown, a lot of people said, "Oh, this is a terrible pick." So I fell into the trap of not listening to the real experts. We have somebody who contributes to our newspaper who liked him and who talked about him before. And I thought, well, everybody on the NFL Network or whoever says don't take him. So I agree with you. I think people fall into that trap. I think you get enamored with guys because of 40 times, which I think is kind of stupid. I think 40 times validate players. I think if you're a great player and you're on a 4.3 40, it just validates that you're fast, but it shouldn't vault you into the first round because of it. So I think we all fall for that trap.
John Ross from the Bengals. Perfect example.
There you go. Mike Mamula.
Well, it happens every year. I guess what I come down to is, like I was telling you before we got on the show, I'm really hard on quarterbacks, right? Because the standard in the NFL to be successful is there. There's like no gray area. You're either able to do it, or you learn to be able to do it, or you're out of the league, or you're just kind of hovering around being mediocre because somebody's not really caring about trying to win a ring. I mean, there are teams that do that. Like, if you're good enough to put butts in the seat, they'll keep you around, you know. I think that's kind of what happened with guys like Phillip Rivers and such that have these long careers, put up good numbers, and they just don't have that extra juice that's going to get you over the hump when it comes back down to the quarterback position. Doesn't mean they're not good. Yeah. It just, you know, it takes a very elite talent or a bunch of other guys lifting that other talent around to be able to do that. And so I watch tape, and I know it's going to sound funny, but when I was transitioning, I read every book on football I can, including Football for Dummies. Okay?
Yeah, right.
And I know it sounds funny, but it really explains, and so you get a really basic and very deep, intricate of all the little things that it takes. People don't realize there's footwork for each individual player in a route. Like, running backs just don't grab the ball and run. There's certain footwork that needs to be in unison with the quarterback and the line to make everything work. It's just weird stuff like that. Daniel Jones, look, there's a lot to be desired, and let's be real, we're talking about college, but when you look at those basic things, like, again, I'm going to reference it, Football for Dummies would break down the basics. He has those. And those certain things are like the building foundation, and it doesn't mean that the house is going to turn out great, but a lot of quarterbacks that are running around this league that are being called elite and all that don't have that same foundation I see a lot of these guys have, and it bothers the shit out of me, quite honestly, Jerry, because it's like
Carson Wentz.
At some point, it's going to rear its ugly head, and it's going to cost your team. And a lot of times, it comes too little or too late after they've already paid the guy, and they're stuck with him. And so with Daniel Jones, I laughed when the whole draft process, because I said, again, I can't say it to a lot of people because they laughed me out of the room about where I've got this knowledge from, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm on my podcast. He's got that basic foundation. And I can say a lot of guys don't have that basic foundation, And so there's a great base there to start off of. And so I didn't understand why everybody said he had no chance of being successful.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think they referenced Dave Brown as the other Duke quarterback. And also what you got to look at, and it's a good point you brought up, he had no teammates go into the pros with him. I mean, he was throwing to guys who had the most drop passes in college football. But your partner there said a guy that I've been on the last few weeks. I've been on the last years, Carson Wentz. I don't get it. I'm not seeing it with him. I think he's a good I joke that I think he played linebacker in college, and they said, "Hey, can you throw the ball? All right, try it," because he's a great athlete and he can throw the ball
I wish
far.
Dylan was on.
But he's not very accurate at all. I mean, and Nick Foles won that Super Bowl, guys, and Nick Foles advanced them in the playoffs last year. And if Alshon Jeffrey catches that ball in New Orleans, I think the Eagles are going back. And they have a statue of Nick Foles in front of that stadium. I mean, you think that doesn't bother Carson Wentz deep down? It's got to drive him crazy. You have Rocky and Nick Foles in that city, and Carson Wentz is nowhere to be found. So, yeah, I agree with you on Wentz. I can go off on Wentz for hours and talk about how inaccurate he is. And
I will say this about Wentz. There are flashes of all those things, but just like any foundation,
it's never together though.
Right. It like never, but just like a lot of foundations, I say this, I can walk up to any foundation with a sledgehammer and put a hole in it and weaken it, and it can start to crumble away and no longer have my foundation. And I think with Wentz's injuries, he had a foundation he was starting to build on, and that's why you saw him start that season where he got hurt and they went on to win the Super Bowl. You saw him get there. And it was just injury after injury, and now it's like somebody walking up to his foundation with a sledgehammer. It's crumbling away, and now there's not much. Like, our partner, our fantasy guy, Dylan, got pissed as hell at me because I've basically thrown all this on him. And I said, if you watch the film, he can't hit the broadside of a barn with nobody in his face, no pressure. Like, there are no fundamental mechanics there. I can't recognize what the hell he's doing when he throws the ball anymore. And I swear to God, Jerry, he was ready to hang up on me.
Yeah, I've never seen a quarterback at this in this year, I guess year 4 he's in, point the ball down every single time before he throws. It's such a herky-jerky motion. I don't understand how it's not corrected yet, but it must be a mental thing. But, yeah, he can't hit anybody right now. It's fun for me to watch, actually.
Well, what I don't get is a lot of people are like, oh, Doug Peterson. I'm like, Doug Peterson drew up a scheme for Nick Foles to produce, and it worked. And I'm like, 100%. These are the same guys Nick Foles used in the Super Bowl, minus Dallas Goedert, and that's it. Like, it's literally almost the same exact scheme players right now, and he can't do it. Same offensive line, and my thing is Carson Wentz, like what Jay said, with the foundation, yes, the injuries, but there's another thing. I have heard so many rumors about his ego cutting a line down that locker room. That's why I've heard rumors of Alshon Jeffrey going on as a random source on a radio show talking crap about Carson because he can't do it within the team locker room because he's going to basically get shoved out like an outcast.
Yeah, I was going to say the last thing I'll say on the Eagles, because I don't want to get sick, is, sometimes it works with guys, right? Like Nick Foles was just the perfect guy for them. I knew when he went to Jacksonville, he would get hurt or it wouldn't work, but it just worked in Philly. And I think they were so afraid of letting go the wrong guy that they kept Wentz because they drafted him second overall. But Nick Foles was perfect for that offense.
He was a team guy. He did everything the team needed. Doesn't matter if he had to block a defensive end, if he had to go lay a shoulder into a safety, he'd do it.
Yep.
I'm going to end it this so I don't make you sick. But Jerry, last year going into the draft, I, on this podcast, suggested that they get what they could for Carson Wentz and build around Nick Foles, because Nick Foles, to me, my point is that if you have two things and one is proven and one is still a theory, what in God's sanity would you go and let the proven commodity go to see what you could get with the theory?
Yeah,
by the way, you have to pay either one of these. Like, it made even business sense. It didn't make any sense. Like, you already won a Super Bowl with a guy, and you could take the other guy that's viewed. universally at that point was still, even coming off injury, was viewed a franchise quarterback. Now, you can't get diddly squat for his ass